It's time for Drummer Nation. Neal Smith has been playing drums since the age of 5. Neal performs regularly with internationally recognized jazz artists such as Tom Harrell, Benny Green, and Cyrus Chestnut, to name just a few. He leads his own jazz group and founded the NAS label in 2004, which focuses exclusively on the production of jazz recordings. He is a dedicated educator and is a professor at Berklee College of Music. The former Crescent Vanguard series are now widely available as part of the legendary Sabian HH models. HH cymbals are traditionally hand-hammered into shape and sound by Sabian craftsmen. Find out more about the Vanguard series and all other Sabian models at Sabian.com. Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best. Check out their website at soundsynergies.net.
Hi, this is Stanton Moore. I've been playing and teaching drums for over 30 years. My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Hi, this is Michael Vosbein, your host for Drummer Nation, and I do the show as a labor of love, but I could use a little help. If you'd like to be a patron of the show, please go to the site patreon.com/Drummer Nation. Help us out. Thanks. Neal Smith, my good friend, how are you, brother? Great to see you.
Yeah, man. How are you doing, brother?
I can't complain. You know, you and I have been friends for so long that I didn't prepare a formal, scripted sort of interview because we know each other so well. So I want to talk a lot about drums and cymbals and music, but let's touch a little bit in the beginning about your past. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio.
And you went to school where?
I went to my first year of school, I went to Cleveland State University. And after 1 year, I transferred and went to Oberlin Conservatory.
Good schools, man.
Yeah.
And then how'd you get out of school and start working and move to New York? And take us through that.
My first year at Oberlin, that's basically when I really decided that I was completely committed. I knew then that I was going to be doing this for the rest of my life. I knew it before, but that was like when I actually start putting things in motion. And I started Oberlin in 1992, and each summer I moved to New York and spent the summers there to try to get a feel for the city and a feel for the scene. And that was basically how I learned about New York and realized what it was going to take in order to be successful here.
That's a great idea. You kind of inched your way in.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So when you finally moved, did you already have a gig there, or did you move looking for work?
I had met a lot of musicians, and I also started playing with different people. My first, I guess, major gig was playing with Benny Green.
Great jazz piano player for folks who might not know.
That's right. I met him during my second year in Oberlin, and he invited me to New York to rehearse and play with him. So it kind of started there, and by the time I graduated, I had a pretty large rapport of friends and musicians in the community. And so by the time I moved here, my friends were just like, they couldn't wait, till I got here because we had spent all those summers together.
I think what our cymbals brought to the Sabian family is that there is lots more hand hammering. They're all hand hammered, and so you really have to perfect the hammering technique and where to hammer on the cymbal. You don't want to get the cymbal too thin in a lot of places. They were willing to try it, and I think we came out with a great product that is a great musical instrument.
Well, that's a smart way to move to New York. Now, pretty soon after that, you scored the gig with Betty Carter, right?
I wanted to be in Betty Carter's band, and I was never in her band, but I ended up, I was friends with people that were in her band. And so I was doing my best to try to get in her band, because at that time, her band was like it was a school. It was a mentoring school. And I really wanted to be in that band. I basically felt like that was like the equivalent of the Jazz Messengers here in New York, and an institution basically that wasn't for everybody. And I really wanted to be in that band, and I ended up rehearsing with her band to try to get in the band.
Tell us for some of the great drummers who came through that band.
Oh my God, Jesus. There's Kenny Washington, Louis Nash, Greg Bandy, Bernard Harper, Greg Hutchinson, Eric Harland. I mean, Clarence Penn. Everybody, everybody. I felt, it's kind of funny. It's like all the drummers that were in her band and that were successful in staying in her band, they're all like the leaders now. They're all the leaders on the scene.
Well, one of the things her band... I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
One of the things her band was known for was playing ridiculously slow and ridiculously fast. So I'm wondering if you came up with any mechanisms, like, you hear people talk about, first of all, when the shit is really fast, quarter note equals 300, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that guys will think in terms of halftime. 1, 2, 3, 4, while they're playing, even though it's down, diddling, 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 diddling. Is that something you've thought of or utilized? Sound Synergy's Percussion Care lubricants and conditioners include a series of 3 products for total drum kit care and maintenance. Pedal Lube, the only product specifically designed for bass drum, hi-hat pedals, and triggers, as well as all moving metal parts and drum hardware, safely removes grit, grime, and other contaminants while protecting against harmful friction wear. Cymbal Care restores and conditions cymbal surfaces without strippers or harmful polishes. Wear Barrier is a conditioning formula for all drum heads, rims, and even sticks. Percussion Care products in your gig bag ensures your entire kit will always look and sound its best.
I think the biggest thing for me was endurance. Mm-hmm. So I was always practicing really fast tempos and seeing how long I could do it, because whenever I was in a situation with certain musicians, you just never knew how long they were going to play. Like, for example, Benny Green loves to play fast, and musicians like that, it's a sink or swim situation, and you don't know how long you're going to be in the water for, So it was more for me, and I still it's like, well, how long can I maintain this? Not so much about the subdivisions, although I'm always practicing subdivisions and trying to think, figure out easier ways to do it. I think the hardest thing for me then and now was playing brushes at that tempo, at those tempos. And I've always felt like if you can do it with brushes, then you can do it with sticks.
You're not talking about breaking it up between 2 hands, right? You're talking about the right hand playing the right pattern. Absolutely.
Playing the cymbal pattern in the right hand and playing the time. That's how, when I first saw people play fast, I just thought that was the way you did it. I used to follow Jeff Hamilton around with Ray Brown. I used to watch Jeff, and he played these tempos in his sleep. He wouldn't even think. It's like he was eating a tuna fish sandwich, and checking his messages on his phone. Like just no effort. And
well, that's what it has to be, right? To play that fast that long, it has to be no effort. Otherwise, you beat yourself up.
Yeah. Kenny Washington, the same thing. I remember somebody my age, Greg Hutchinson. I remember watching him play many times. Play these just ridiculously fast tempos, and they look like they were just, I don't know, like.
I always thought Mel Lewis looked like he was sitting in church.
Yeah, they
didn't
just,
matter what the tempo was.
It always seemed effortless. So, that's impressionable on me. And so I always wanted to, be like that. I remember many times watching Lewis Nash play with Tommy Flanagan, and just very, very little movement, and he would, this thing would seem like it would just go on forever and ever, and nothing fluctuated. I guess with all that, and then also watching the elders, like Ben Riley. I remember watching him many nights play with the group Sphere.
Exactly, that monk tribute band.
Yeah, man. And, man, he would just cool as a cucumber. I can remember, like, looking down at his bass drum and his hi-hat, and just, it was like he was driving a car. He didn't look like he was, working at this thing at all, but you're sitting here listening to the sound, and that's, all these things, I think it's like a collective thing. Like, you start staring at other musicians, watching their posture, watching how they hold the brush, checking out how they have their drums tuned. Are the drum heads really loose? Are they really tight? A lot of things come into play. And then also playing heel up as opposed to heel down is a huge thing. When I moved to New York, I used to predominantly play my hi-hat with my heel up. But then, when I would watch some people that I just named play, especially really fast, like Billy Higgins.
That's interesting. When you said heel up, I immediately thought bass drum, but you're talking about the hi-hat heel down.
Yeah, that heel up on their bass drum, and my bass drum I used to play heel down and just go back and forth. But I specifically remember playing my hi-hat like basically with my toe coming, heel up, and I remember one of the first realizations when I would watch like Ben Riley or Billy Higgins, Victor Lewis Nash. They would play with their heel down, and it was like they were like really grounded when they played the set behind the set. And I remember spending many years practicing like that, wanting to look like that.
That's a good point. It does help ground you more balance-wise, doesn't it? If your left heel is down, instead of being poised on two nodes of your bottom while your feet are heel up, you're much more grounded heel down.
My new site, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, is the perfect online drum learning platform for any level drummer to learn how to play the drums the same way I did, with the advantage of having me road test the material on hundreds of stages, countless clinics, lessons, and master classes, and dozens of studio sessions every year. On the site, you'll find over 13 hours of video, dozens of written lessons, and fresh material gets added all the time. I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you as subscribers on the site, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Okay, another thing I wanted to ask you is kind of the opposite of playing those really ridiculously fast tempos or those ridiculously slow ones, what Betty Carter excelled at. So did you try to like double them up in your head? So when it's like here, 1, 2, you're thinking,
well, for slow tempos, I remember very specifically what I did to address that. My best friend Paul Samuels, really great drummer from Cleveland. He also teaches at Oberlin Conservatory and plays a lot.
Good man.
Yeah, he's incredible. It's because of him and a few others why I'm even in this position to be playing music. Paul hit me to some artists that he felt were extremely important for that. And by the time I dove into that, that really helped me. He told me to listen to the Three Sounds records. That's right. Shirley Horn records, and also Little Jimmy Scott records.
Oh, wow.
And I used to play along with those albums all of the time. Those were like my Bibles. And I remember meeting Jeff Hamilton in '92, and Jeff mentioned the Three Sounds records, the Three Sounds to me. And I said, yeah, I just learned about them. And I remember him talking to me about playing those tempos and playing my bass drum specifically, feathering my bass drum and maintaining the intensity of my cymbal beat. And so that was kind of like where and how I practice those types of tempos. And then I also worked with some really great musicians. I didn't get to play with them for a long time, but I had some really great experiences. There's this really great bassist who's still alive in Cleveland. His name is Lamar Gaines. He's incredible. He's a virtuoso, and I had the opportunity to play with him a few times, and he used to play really slow tempo, and it was really tough for me. It was really tough, but it was a great training ground. And between that and playing along to certain records, specifically Three Sounds, Little Jimmy Scott, and Shirley Horn records, that helped me a lot. And then when I moved to New York, it seemed like I got hired by a lot of singers. When I first moved to New York, that first year, I met singer Vanessa Rubin, and I ended up going over the world with her. For a long time, she gave me an opportunity. Actually, was recommended by Jeff Watts, and I ended up playing with Vanessa for a few years. Really great band, and she used to play, a lot of different tempos, a lot of slow tempos, and that was a really great stomping ground for me.
I think it's a lot of my favorite drummers, the ones who are the most musical, I think, end up playing with singers. You think of Harold Jones, Roy McCurdy, Dennis McCrell, Lewis, because it requires you to be so musical, and to not overpower the singer.
Absolutely, yet still bring fire. So I kind of think about playing with singers like that. It's although the tempos may be extremely fast or extremely slow, or the music may be quiet and soft, it still has to have great intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Still has to burn like the flame, And I was taught that at a very young age, and that was another thing that that was required, especially playing with somebody like Betty Carter, who I again really wish I was able to get, be an official member in her band, but those types of artists required that.
Pretty soon thereafter, you began to put records out as a leader, which I think is a great idea. What was the thinking behind that?
What made me start doing my own records was the fact that I didn't want to wait for someone else's validation to validate maybe my musical ideas or concepts, to get a record deal, because I would see what a lot of artists would go through just to be able to record their material. And some people never got any opportunity. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. And that was a transitional period. That was a time when things would be more accessible to us. You had these CD packaging companies that was popular at the time. There were distribution companies out there where you can get, worldwide distribution if they like what you were doing. And I was like, wow, well, wait a minute. So I can just do this myself and, not have to sell anything to anybody and put out my own records, just like, and Verve and all these other companies. And so that's what I did. And I remember my first recording, I did 2 recordings at the same time and put them out. And I thought it was pretty successful. And I thought it was a really good start. And then from there, I started doing records for my friends, producing them and putting out records. And it just kind of started there. And I'm really glad that I did it that way, because nowadays, you don't really need a record company. You don't need a record company. I mean, everybody's putting out their own, albums and so forth, and it's quite easy to do. Mm-hmm. And then, the next thing is that the industry is changing, in that, like, people don't even buy CDs anymore because of the internet. They're record stores are
no more.
Those days are over. No more Tower Records and GNR Music and all of these places. Virgin Records. Those days are over. Lots of things are online now. If you want an album, you go online. We're now fighting the issue of, you record a record, people go online, and they're just downloading and streaming it for free. Artists aren't making any money now. So we're dealing with that. So, and you talk about a span of, it has not been long. We're talking about 2000. You're talking about 13 years. So say 15 years. This major change has happened. From 15 years ago, there were, record stores in major cities where you can just go buy CD after CD and DVD and stuff like that. And 15 years later, it's all online now.
People forget how new the iPhone is, how new apps are. YouTube was in 2007. Facebook is brand new, considering the history of time. And these are serious changes that affect our society at every level, and especially artists.
Yes, big time.
Mm-hmm.
So that, that was just kind of my whole, the whole reason why I decided to do it myself.
Well,
I just didn't want to wait around.
Understood. This ties into my next question. You teach now at Berklee, right?
Yes.
And we'll talk about that in a second, but what do you tell the kids who are coming through the schools that are coming out playing their butts off and are walking into this world that has fewer opportunities, or at least different opportunities, than we all grew up with?
Yeah, that's something that everyone's talking about, because there's more musicians and less gigs, less opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, these days, you have to have a lot of things going on to stay in the game.
Exactly.
It's tough, and I must be honest, it's tough, because when you really believe in something, and you've spent so many years, or like in my case, the majority of my life,
mm-hmm.
hearing the music a certain way, being introduced to the music a certain way, having dreams and hopes and aspirations to one day be doing what I worked so hard to want to do, musicians wanting to play with certain musicians and so forth. And then, as you get older, technology is changing, and all of this stuff is changing. The sound of the music is changing. I call myself a jazz drummer. Just the title jazz alone, what does that really mean? We could get in a discussion about that. That could be, we could have.
Yeah.
That's a total, and so with the students, it's really tricky, and I'm very honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
My thing is, first of all, whatever it is that you want to do, you need to be goddamn good at it. That's the first thing. And when you're good at it, always know that there's a 50-50 chance that you're even going to be able to just do that, to even play. To be out on the scene playing. And so with that in mind, don't close minded. Try to figure out how many ways can you do what it is that you're trying to do. How many, that's an important thing. How many ways can you do it?
I was just talking to my son Kevin about that yesterday. It's like, how many things can you put in your music basket? Okay, you're a drummer. Great. But are you still a musician if you teach? Well, of course you are. Are you still a musician if you're doing Drummer Nation and I'm interviewing drummers? Well, yes. Did I feel like a musician when I had a cymbal company? Of course. All these things go into the basket of being a musician. And the more things you have in the basket, the better off you're going to be. And they all support one another. I don't feel any less of a drummer because I'm doing a talk show right now than I do when I'm on a gig.
Absolutely. Everything is valid. I try to tell these students, try not to get in the mindset of jack of all trades, master of none. There are a lot of people I see doing a lot of things, but they're not really good at one specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, see a lot of these students step out here and they think that certain things are going to happen for them. And I feel like it's even worse. I say, well, okay, you got a lot of things going on, but You never really spent time to really master any one thing. So then that's working against them. Mm-hmm. Then I have students who are completely opposite, who really spend a lot of time getting certain things together, but they're closed-minded.
Too narrowly defined.
They're too narrowly defined. And, you know, it's funny because a few musicians just instantly pop in my mind. Like, it's funny. I always think, I say, man, if you were here 30 years ago, you'd be doing everything you want. Mm-hmm. But we're living in a society now where it's not like that. And now there's all of these institutions with jazz programs. I feel like the new thing is the conversation amongst a lot of musicians now is, well, what school do you teach at? Mm-hmm. And, oh, well, I'm here. Okay, well, I'm down here. 20 years ago, it's like conversation was like, so how long are you going to be in Europe for? And when is your CD release? I know you just came out with it. Things are just, man, they're changing. They're changing, and they are getting tougher. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that don't talk about that stuff. And the reality is, it's getting tougher. And even for people that are out here playing on a regular basis, God bless them, and I'm happy for them. But even they will tell you it's tough. Things are getting tougher. I have this saying that I heard on a movie, and I say it to everybody. I say, when I hear people complaining about what's going on out here, I say, listen, even though people on those gigs, don't let them fool you. Okay, don't just think that the people that you see out here that are playing a lot and doing a lot of things, don't think that this is just like a walk in the park for them. And I always say, just because you pour syrup on it doesn't make it pancakes. All right, so don't be fooled. Because there were a good friend of mine just recently. Two really good friends of mine. We're working with artists, really well-known artists, and they both just got fired. No
fault of their own sometimes.
Right. A few weeks ago, and I'm checking both of them out, how they're dealing with the situation. And it's just like, when it's good, just take care of business the best way you can. Mm-hmm. But always keep in the back of your mind, think about other options.
You're freelancing, baby.
Think about other options and other things you can do, other people you can play with, other musical situations. Mm-hmm. You think that you would be really great at. And actually be proactive in getting yourself in those situations.
Now, when you went to Berklee a few years ago as a teacher, I guess that's been 5 or 6 years ago now, that's some pretty tall cotton when it turns, it's old Southern expression, for some serious major players teaching there. How, and you're one of them, how were you able to find your voice as a teacher there with all those people?
That's a really good question. When I first started, when I was first asked to teach at Berklee, I will tell you right now, I was really nervous. I just didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm getting at.
And at the end of the day, the only thing I knew that I could do was just be myself and I tried to bring my musical experiences there, it was very intimidating because I was the youngest one on the faculty. That was very intimidating, because I don't know. I'm not saying you need to be old to teach. I was just the youngest on the faculty, and that was intimidating, and I had to earn my grits, and I had to really go out of my way. I felt to prove myself on and off the bandstand at Berklee, and it didn't take. It took maybe 2 years to finally feel there, to learn the culture of the school, learn the culture of the percussion department, and then at the end of the day, just bring my experiences, bring what I've been taught, things that have helped me become successful, bring all of that, and just completely be honest with the students. My whole thing is, whatever I talk about or teach, it's from a practical aspect. I'm not just going to teach something that's cool to do. It might be cool to do, but if you can't use it on a gig or use it in music, I see no point of doing it.
Here.
So my thing is, let's talk about what it takes to make a living doing this. And then let's find out where you are in that and what we can do now to get you set up so that you have the tools to be able to come out here and physically, musically take care of business. Yeah.
That's Michael Carvinish, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I had the honor of interviewing him last week, and I know he would agree. You would agree with what he and I talked about, which is that a good teacher in the arts is something of a mentor, who's going to help you to become, like a life coach. He's going to help you to become a functioning, positive human being, life force on this planet, doing what you do, instead of playing page 17 from book number 42.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny, when I think about some of my best lessons, situations that I learned the most, they were not sitting behind a drum set.
Mm-hmm.
Strange enough. I'm not saying I didn't, yeah, of course I had some great lessons with, my teachers sitting behind the drums, but some of the life-changing lessons that I've had, the more insightful lessons, they all happened off the instant. They usually happen with me listening to a conversation, or having a direct conversation. People getting me to think about certain things. Watching people is a huge thing. Just watching people, how they do things when they're on the road. It's like, wow, okay, so that's how you do it. I remember, for example, Jeff Hampton, I know I'm very close to Jeff. I remember going to Japan years ago and doing this double bill. I was playing with Roberta Gambarini, and Jeff was playing with the Clayton Hamilton Orchestra. And just watching how Jeff maneuvered on that tour. Specifically, he gets over there and he's got his personal drums there. That he's got drums all over Japan, right? And I'm like, wow. And, his sound is so important to him. He has all the things from drum heads to cymbals. Everything is there. And all of that was on each gig. At that time, I just showed up with my cymbals and my sticks, and I'm like, wow, okay, here's a lesson. Recently, a few years ago, I was in South Africa, and I was watching one of my contemporaries, Kendrick Scott. Same thing. He had, all his like auxiliary stuff, like snare drums and all these things. And I was watching how he, was dealing with this huge festival night after night, making sure that his stuff was set up so that he could get his sound and have his presentation be consistent. And there's something to be said about that.
Sure is.
Right?
It's getting a lot harder to do.
It's very hard to do, but at the end of the day, it's like the most important thing is the music.
Mm-hmm. That's why you're out there.
Brian Blade, same thing. I said, wow, man, you bring your drums to, there's a certain sound. And I'm not just saying, I'm just using that as an example. I'm just trying to say that watching people, listening to them, it's like, okay, shit, we just missed the flight. Some musicians are up there freaking out. Some musicians aren't. They get in line, and like already 3 or 4 different options going on.
Remember the bass player Eugene Wright played with Dave Brubeck?
Absolutely.
They called him the Senator because he always dealt with that, man. He just dealt with it. Nothing wrong with him. He dealt with it. I don't know the man. I've gigged a few times with him, but that was his reputation. And I've been with Hammer and some other guys out on the road where, shit goes wrong. And they just deal with it. They just maintain their calm and their composure, and they deal with it. And that's what I was getting at about these life lessons that come from more than a bandstand. Or we think of all the great musicians who have worked with Miles Davis who will recount things where Miles told them 3 or 4 words. And it changed their lives.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because who said it and what it meant, and it wasn't on the bandstand necessarily.
Yeah, I felt like I've had a lot of that. Especially, I know that's why I've gotten this far here in New York. I feel like it's been because of those situations and those lessons, the talks, conversations just off the cuff. Not planned, and I can remember like right now, this, really great conversations with Victor Lewis. And it's just like, wow, okay, and these things just kind of go through my head now. Now, I'm getting older. Shit, I'll be 50 soon. I mean, and I remember, just hearing conversations about, what's going to happen as I get older here in New York, and it's funny. It's all consistent. Some things are good, some things are not so good, but they're, just when we talk about survival, I feel like the biggest lessons have been off the bandstand. Definitely.
Well, to that end, we're running out of time, but I'm sure you're a great fit at Berklee. You certainly deserve to be there, and you're offering these kids a lot of great encouragement and advice on and off the drums. So that
thanks.
They're delighted to have you there.
Yeah, doing the best I can. I have some really great students, man, and I'm extremely proud of them. They are definitely bringing a certain level, and really addressing music, and I'm really happy about that. But then again, at the end of the day, school is school, and there are different levels. There's the universities and the colleges, and then as you and I know that we live in University of the Streets. That's our school, and hopefully these students will,
You know as well as I do that sooner or later, when you study with people, you hang out with people, all that information gets processed. Eventually, you find yourself on the bandstand years later, and you go, "Oh, that's what he meant."
Exactly.
You know, you understood it. You thought you understood it, but you didn't really internalize it until it hits for you.
Exactly. I am always trying to mentor a lot of young musicians. I may use some younger musicians on gigs, just so they can have the opportunity to see what it feels like to play with people that can really play. Mm-hmm. And I like the young energy.
It's a different energy.
Nothing trumps experience.
That's right.
And so I try to help as a lot of the younger players, bringing them on gigs, so they can gain certain experience, things, that opportunity that people gave me, and then from there they can figure out if they want to do this or not.
Well, Neal, we're about out of time on these things. Only so far you can go on a podcast, but man, I got a million things you and I can talk about we haven't touched on yet. I know for a fact you know some deep shit about cymbals. So let's talk again on another one, and we'll get into some of that kind of stuff too. Okay?
Well, I would so love it, Mike. Man, we've been brothers for so many years, man. Just want to say I love you, man, and thank you for this opportunity. And it's just really, I just feel like we're sitting in the backyard, doing what we do, just talking and just.
Well, I've been to your home. You haven't been to mine, so you got to come down here and hang too.
I look forward to it, and I hope it happens very soon, man.
This is your host, Michael Vosbine, and I'd like to thank our friends at Sabian Cymbals, Sound Synergies, Stanton Moore Drum Academy, and Classic Drummer Magazine. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.